Welcome to Universal God Message of Peace, and this is our weekly Abrahamic dialogue. I'm Lee Weissman, and this is Dr. Ali Tanser, and this is Dr. Khalid Zaheer, who's up tonight. Last week, I began the topic of what are the qualities, what are the characteristics of a good religious teacher, and today Dr. Zaheer is going to tackle the same topic, and I get to ask him the tough questions. But before we start, before I always do this at the end, but I'm not going to do it at the end this time. Don't forget, if you like what you hear, even if you don't hear all the way to the end, make sure to like and subscribe so that you can hear more of this. We do this every week, and honestly, every week is great. I'm sort of modest. I know that doesn't sound very modest, but I'm going to tell the truth. It's really good. So don't forget to subscribe and to like. Okay, and to comment and to leave your comments and nice comments, the nice comments. The not so nice comments, you don't have to leave those. Okay, Dr. Zaheer.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Wiseman. I begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. Uh, at times, I used to think that doing it the second time is an advantage,
Mhm.
but sometimes I have a feeling that it's a disadvantage. Um, most of the important points have already been more than adequately touched upon by Rabbi Wiseman, and they were really very impressive. Now, I have come up with a trick. I cannot outperform what he did last week in quality. So I'm just trying to make an attempt to outdo him in number. So I've come up with 10, 10 different points, which I think should be there uh, in a religious leader, a religious teacher. And if you find that some of those points are actually uh, repeating, they're repetitive, well, it's because of that bad intention. The motivation was not really good.
I think I only
So
had five, so that means you're 100% ahead of me.
that's right. Okay. The first, it's not mentioned in necessarily an order of descending order of significance. Uh, they're all important in my opinion. The first point I would like to mention is that a religious teacher should be keen and motivated in his field. I say this because there are some people, well, there are many that I find in my tradition who have gone into this, call it career, not by choice. And when you are there without you being personally motivated and keen, you don't do a great job. Uh, well, simply because it's not coming from inside. So that's my first point, that whoever um, is a religious teacher or aspires to be a religious teacher, he really should be keen uh, to do the job. It's true for all careers, but probably most important for the job of being a religious teacher. If you're not motivated, it's not going to come from deep inside your heart, which is where it should come from. The second thing, and I'm sure many of the things that I'm going to mention are what uh, Rabbi Wiseman has already mentioned. Uh, the second thing is that the a good religious teacher should be genuinely a seeker after truth. Uh, he should not be somebody who really has been given a few set of rules, set of teachings, which he thinks are there now for me to understand them and then put across to others. Well, uh, he should be the one who should feel that, he's looking for the truth And what he has with him right now, which he's putting across to others, is actually with the feeling, motivation that it is the truth for him. And, you know, the same spirit is what he should create, inculcate in his students. That, you know, don't necessarily listen to and accept what I'm saying all the time. If you think that what I'm saying is not up to the mark or not making sense to you, uh, be a true seeker after the truth. A third important quality that I would always want to see in a good religious teacher is uh, his politeness. Uh, Politeness is important because the message is so very important to be delivered that if the person who is delivering the message is impolite, uh, it will not have that effect. People who are being addressed are not going to receive it with the spirit that is desired. And I know through experience that both politeness and impoliteness are contagious. They are learned by students, by pupils. So if a teacher is polite in what he is saying, communicating, uh, his students are very likely to have the same virtue in them. So I feel that it's extremely important. The fourth point that I've mentioned is that a religious teacher should have clarity, clarity of thought and clarity of speech. Uh, there is no point in being a great religious scholar. I mean, you can be a scholar, but we're talking about a teacher. When you cannot articulate what you have in your mind and in your understanding in a way that is getting clearly across to others. So, this is a great virtue, and it's something that should always be there. It ought to be there in a religious teacher because, I mean, what is the point in mentioning a religious message which is not even uh, getting to the other people in a way that they're understanding it properly? Uh, the religious teacher, I'm sure this point, what I'm saying is a repetition of an earlier point, but so what? I have to complete my the count of 10. He should be prepared to accept and should listen carefully, therefore. That is, you know, if it's pointed out to him that what he has presented is partly or to a great extent uh, incorrect or faulty or not presented properly, he should have within him the moral courage to accept. And for that purpose, he should listen to others carefully. Uh, I know that you already know it, but I would still want to emphasize that this is not easy. You know, uh, if you are a teacher who has some reputation, and there are people who are listening to you and following you, you are bound to have within you this feeling that you are good and people like you, admire you, and therefore you don't like uh, criticism. You don't like anybody pointing out uh, that what you're saying is not correct, or the way you are putting it across is not acceptable. Uh, as much as it is difficult, I think it is also important. Uh, and there is no shortcut to it except for the fact that one should continue to practice it. And I think continue to be self-critical. Uh, it's difficult, but it's important, as I said. And linked with this point is the quality that a good teacher would always encourage questions. Uh, it's one thing that when somebody asks you questions, you answer them. But it's one step further that you are actually telling your students that they must look for questions that would further clarify what is being discussed. So that I think is important. And I think uh, a good teacher, by encouraging students and appreciating, admiring good questions, should inculcate in the students this quality of asking good questions, looking for good questions. Uh, then the seventh point that I've jotted down is that honestly, I believe that this point has to do with the purpose of religion, uh, which is, I believe, to solve the puzzle of this life. So a religious teacher should always be looking to solve the puzzle and not to make it even more complicated. Quite often, religious teachers, in the manner they speak, in the contents they put across, they're making things worse uh, than what ordinarily they are in the absence of a religious message. So, it should be clear to us that uh, this life, this world has been created by the Almighty, and we are following uh, a message which we believe and claim to be from our Creator. And obviously, uh, this message is meant for clarifying to the people what the Creator had in mind when He designed this life. So that puzzle should have should get clarified, should be removed, and things should become more clear. The purpose of life and the scheme of the Almighty should become clearer. Another important thing that should be there in a religious teacher, which I'm sure is not possible for every individual to have, even every scholar cannot have this quality. But I think it's very important for a good religious teacher that he should be able to engage the students. You know, uh, he should be able to generate interest, motivate students, the listeners, to get involved. Uh, I quite often find myself embarrassed that when I start making a presentation, believe me or not, there are some people who start snoring. It is as if I have started doing something which was meant for them to go to sleep. And I keep asking myself, what on earth can I do really to improve? But I don't know. I mean, there are people who are exceptionally engaging. They when they start speaking, it is as if everybody is focused and looking for the speaker to say more. I think it's an extremely important ability, which if it's not there in a person, well, he should try to look for it, try to develop within himself. Uh, this point number 9, I do believe is important, even though some people might just say that it's just uh, not important. Uh, so it's not something that you should be talking about. I think because the subject of religion is, by its nature, let's face it, it's dry. It's not. It's not. It's not a subject where people are normally thrilled, no matter what their background, what their training. Uh, it actually expects the listener, the reader, to have a minimum level of interest in the subject for it to be understood properly. So what I'm trying to say is that a good religious teacher should have a good sense of humor, which should keep the presentation, you know, uh, having the quality of being heard, and those who are present should continue to remain engaged. I have uh, I have seen this in the Western world. Um, I've seen it in many Muslim speakers who are popular, and I'm absolutely sure that they didn't come up with it on their own because they are in competition with Christians and Jew speakers. Therefore, they have learnt it from them. Honestly, I've gone to many uh, marriage ceremonies, nikah ceremonies. Each time I go there, I remember I went not long ago to one of these occasions, and the way the speaker spoke, I later met him, shook his hands, and said that, I must have solemnized more than 100 nikahs in my career. And I'm feeling so embarrassed that all of them were so boring. Now that I've listened to what you've done, uh, I I don't know how to do it, because I'd always felt that this is an occasion where probably you should say a few things, of a few advices should be given. Something should be mentioned that would enable uh, the the couple in the making and others to think about. But my goodness, there's so much of humor now involved in many of these presentations that cause people to be fully engaged, uh, which is not a bad idea, except for the fact that it should be in the right proportion. It should not dominate the presentation. Uh, the final virtue that I'm mentioning about a good religious teacher is something, obviously, which cannot be uh, overemphasized or exaggerated, is that the religious teacher should be morally upright. Uh, Unfortunately, sometimes it so happens, because let's face it, a religious teacher, by the nature of his job, has influence and control over his her students, probably more than any other person can have. uh, the students, they not only admire their religious teachers, they are in awe of them. They are kind of sacred for them. The reverence that is attached to this job uh, makes some people, at least, get carried away. I mean, it is a reality that some religious teachers, they misuse uh, their status, and to the obviously detriment of the students. Uh, they are harrowing tales of things happening which are extremely immoral, uh, and they, in most cases, go unreported. And this is because of the immense control that a religious teacher enjoys over his students, pupils, on the one hand, and the kind of reverence, respect that is given to the teachers, that in most cases, the students who are exploited, they dare not speak. They don't do it. So I think it's very, very important. I go to the extent of saying, obviously, it's a probably making a statement which many people would not agree to, that we should not have cases of a religious teacher who is a man teaching to men and women getting married to one of his students. I mean, you can disagree with me, but honestly, the relationship should be that of daughters, sons. That should be the only way of looking at them. Because if we open the door of this possibility, then I mean, imagine such an important task. I mean, there's no other task more sacred uh, than putting across religious message. And there are people who are hunting for their partners. I mean, what do you mean? This should not be the case. Likewise, this is just one aspect of it. There could be other possibilities, other ways through which teachers can actually exploit their students. So really, there's no other way out. There's no other way out except that the teacher who is engaged in the task of teaching his students a religious message should be very strong in his moral character. Uh, I promised 10 points. I've completed them. I was hoping that I'll give 3 minutes each to all points, but alas, I gave 2 minutes each. So here I am completing the tally, and now it's up to you to comment and ask questions.
Well, you'll
Thank
have
you
to
very
put up with me for longer then, because that means I have longer time. First of all, I just want to point out that I actually took notes. So if you saw me looking down,
much.
I was taking notes. I wasn't checking my email. Um, so I just want to share some impressions I had from these points, which are all, I mean, all excellent. I don't know what to say, but that they were all excellent. The first one, the keen to do it, is a very interesting one. The truth is that religion used to be so back in the Middle Ages, like the most plum job you could have was to be a religious cleric, right? That was like it meant you were smart, it meant you were talented. But today, right, most people want their kids to be engineers or doctors, right? So if you end up being a religious teacher, it probably means that you don't know how to do anything else, right? Which is a horrible thing to say, but it's true in many, many places. And so the person who ends up teaching ends up being the person who really should not be teaching, because they don't really necessarily want to do it, but it's kind of like what maybe in their family that's what they did. And when all else fails, if you can't be an engineer and you can't be a doctor, right? And you don't know how to do business and the family doesn't have a business, well, this is what you do. And um, that's true for rabbis also. It also does happen, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy when it does, because of course people respond to your enthusiasm, people respond to your interest, and that makes a lot of sense. Being a seeker after truth, I would add to be a seeker after truth, but not but not necessarily a holder of truth. I think sometimes there are some people who feel like I have the truth and nobody else has it. And here I'm handing this to you. And now you go out and you tell everybody that you have the truth and nobody else has it. And that is a very unhealthy sign, because, at the end of the day, we are finite human beings trying to understand an infinite reality, right? An infinite God. And so we are never going to have the whole truth. So we have to be prepared for that and be a little humble and say, this is the truth as I understand it right now, given who I am, given my skills, given my background, given how I understand the world. This is what I think I know, and I'm telling you. And now, you do with it. You ask questions, right? You raise questions of your own, and the politeness, absolutely. All it takes is for a person to say, "So do you understand, you idiot?" Like, and all it takes is one word, right? It takes one word, and you completely ruin not only the student, not only that student, but all the students around, because now they have the sense, aha, this is how we talk to people. This is how a teacher talks to people. And you're right, it's very contagious. And you see, it's amazing how you can see a person, and I can see a rabbi speak, and I can say, I know who his teacher is. I can tell who his teacher is by the way that he talks, right? And really in the way that he speaks to people, and um, and that politeness and that grace is very, very, very important, because you're really at that moment you're really representing you're really representing the tradition. If you're teaching Quran, you're representing Quran, and so you your job is not to, as you said last time. I thought it was beautiful, and it stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it all week. Is not to mimic what you think the tone of the Quran is, right? Because you cannot speak from a God's eye perspective. That's not for you to speak like that, right? But for you to be able to understand it from a human perspective, and with respect and with patience and all the good things. So that made perfect sense to me. Clarity, the ability to simplify. I know so many people who are so brilliant, right? But the highest level of brilliance is to take a complicated concept and to make it simple. The more somebody knows, the more they can make something simple. The less somebody knows, the more complicated it's going to come out. And so I
That's
think that clarity, and it's not easy because sometimes things are very complicated, but the extent to which you can be clear, and extent to which you can simplify, and to package things in a way that people can understand it, it makes perfect sense. Accepting and listening, absolutely. We talked about that last week, but I think that's really important. Encouraging questions. Encouraging questions. I'll teach a very simple trick. This is for all you teachers out there. Okay, you ready? Okay. So a student starts to speak. Okay. They make a point. Now, you can say, if you say to them anything else, they will stop talking. If you say, so what else is there? They'll keep talking, right? Very, very simple. You can end the conversation, or you can open up the conversation with one little sentence, one tiny sentence. Anything else? That's it. They shut down, right? What else? Right? They're going to keep talking. So if you what else more than anything else, that in itself will do good. I love this, and I also, you've said this before. It says, I love that you say, love, looking to solve the puzzle for the better. You know, ultimately, you know, the goal is to make life better, right? Right? God speaks to man in order to make our life better. And if what we're saying and what we're teaching is not making anybody's life better, or God forbid, making it worse, then there must be something wrong. There has to be something wrong. If we're not giving people what they need to understand better their situation, and to deal with their situation better, and to be able to kind of move through the world in a way which is better, then something has gone wrong. And I find that a lot of religious teaching just makes people miserable. You just have to look at their faces, you know. It's and I think that that's a real problem, and to approach it that way and say, okay, my job is to make the lives of these people better, right? Not to press them into some sort of mold, which is, I think, how a lot of teachers think of it, right? My job is I have a bunch of, I have a bunch of raw material here. How do I transform that raw material into what I want it to look like? Right? I think a lot of teachers sort of have that kind of perspective. And instead of that, to be able to look at to look at your audience, to look at your students, and to say, okay, so I have a bunch of individuals here, each of whom is dealing with with their world. How do I make this world easier for them? How do I help them understand better what's going on in the world and what's going on in their lives? And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful point. And engaging, you know, I wrote down, okay, I wrote down, generate interest without a stick. That's what I wrote, the stick. My rabbi was was of the generation of the stick, you know, he was of the generation of the stick. And in his generation, the way that you generated interest is if the student was interested, you just hit them. They would become suddenly fascinated. So I think that that's not the right way to generate interest. Um, the sense of humor thing, in the Jewish tradition, the sense of humor thing goes back a long, long way. There's a discussion in the Talmud about how rabbis should speak. And there was a rabbi, I think it was Rava, and says that he used to speak, he used to tell a milta dibdehuta before every lecture, which translates as a joke. He would tell a joke before every lecture. And the commentators, the commentators are a little disturbed by this, honestly, right? Because, like, is that appropriate? And they said, well, why would he do that? So the commentators discuss it, and some of the commentators say, well, it was in order to relax the audience, right? So the audience would open up when people are happy, right? And people are happy. When they've been tickled a little bit, they feel an openness, an openness. And another commentator said, no, no, no. It was for the speaker, right? So that the speaker could kind of deal with his own nervousness, right? And his own, right? Loosen himself up a little bit so he'd be able to speak better. And I think the answer is really both, right? To have a sense of humor, it makes it easier for you, it makes it easier for them. Um, and again, it shouldn't be, it doesn't have to be a comedy show. And I personally, I also like weddings that have a little bit of humor, and especially because people are tense, right? People are tense and people are worried, and have a little bit of, a little bit of lightness. I think is very healthy. Um, I'm less enthusiastic about it, to be honest. I don't know why this is. I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it. The rabbis who do circumcisions, okay, are notorious for their jokes. Now, because everybody is very nervous, right? The mother is nervous and the father is nervous and everybody's nervous and nobody knows exactly what to do. And so they tend to be funny. And I sometimes find it like too much. It's like, please, okay, please, we could cut this. See, I just did it. So in any case, sorry. Um, but I think that humor is generally very, very, very healthy. And religion, yeah, it's true, I mean, and it is really true that religion can be dry. And as far as the person sleeping, um, I feel like I got my just desserts a few weeks ago because so I'll be honest. When I speak, I speak in a community of some older people, okay? And I have a couple of people who fall asleep. And it's very sweet because they'll tell me after, you have such a soothing voice. Your voice is so soothing that I just, you know, at least that's nice. I mean, I'm glad that my voice is soothing, that, you're very quiet and you have soothing voice. And okay, it's very nice. But still, a part of me is like, well, I'm not interesting enough. I do tell a joke, and I don't really tell a joke in the beginning, but I try to be funnier in the beginning. And but they fall asleep. But I went to New York a couple of weeks ago, and I went as visiting the rabbi, my future in-laws synagogue, and the rabbi began to speak, and just I just nodded right off. I nodded right off. I fell asleep right away. And afterwards, my future in-law asked me, "So, how did you," knowing that I'd fallen asleep, very slyly asked me at the table, "So, how did you enjoy the rabbi's speech?" And of course, I said the appropriate thing. I said, "Oh, it was very interesting." And he said, "So, what was it about?" And I said, he has a very soothing voice. He has a very, very soothing voice. And I think I kind of fell asleep. And the truth is, I sort of like had heard enough to kind of piece together a, a bizarre version of what he had said. What I came up with was bizarre because I woke up for 2 seconds, woke up for 2 seconds, woke up for 2 seconds. So I have been properly punished for thinking bad of people who sleep during my talks. But yes, with a little sense of humor is much better than a stick for keeping people awake. And the last point I can't emphasize too much, right? The abuse that people can do. And it could be financial abuse, it could be sexual abuse, it can be abuse of power. There's so many ways that people can abuse that position, and it's toxic, especially because I can't. Okay. I don't mean this in any kind of blasphemous way, um, but it's in the mind of that person you represent God. Okay, and I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you should, and I think it's and I wish and I wish that I hope that I never do. I hope that I never do. But that is the way it works. That is the way it works. I once somebody once I used to teach in a Jewish school, and I taught Torah studies, and somebody asked me if I ever flunked a student. Okay, did I ever get an F to a student? I said absolutely not. And they said, why? I said, because it's like God giving you an F, you know? It's like God giving you an F, and God would never give you an F. I mean, it would me saying that I, as your teacher, have given up on you. And I don't have the right to do that because I'm teaching about God, and God won't give up on us. I can't give up. So I can't give an F. So I said, any other teacher, you want to give Fs, you go ahead, you give Fs, but I'm not giving an F, not ever. Um, and I think that people don't realize the incredible damage they do to people's faith
Yeah,
when something like this happens. When those relationships are betrayed, it can be very, 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 very awful. Um, and I don't even know where to begin with this one, but it's um, yeah, it's
you
really, really, really important.
absolutely. I mean, in my school where I am now doing some administrative work, the other day, one of our imams who teaches the Quran, he parked his car and he was about to come in. And one of the students of probably class one or kindergarten, he said to his teacher that, you know what, God Almighty is about to enter. So,
Oh,
you're right.
right,
That's what the impression is.
right.
So that's how kids look at religious teachers. So you really need to be very, very careful. I agree. And thank you very much for commenting on each and every point that I mentioned.
I
I'm sure that you
I
clarified
love
them.
it. I have to tell you, I feel like I have so much, you give me so much to think about. I really, really appreciate these talks so much. I feel like I come away with so much more than I started with last week. So now, and that's, I think that's the ultimate goal, is to learn, and to learn from each other. And I learned so much from you. Really, I'm very grateful.
Absolutely the same way. So do I. Uh, which is actually, a great thing to happen. And I think we should be thankful to Dr. Lalit Ansar for
Very
having
thankful.
arranged these meetings. And I hope some other people might actually be also benefiting to some extent. Uh, Honestly, I mean, my own benefit is good enough for me to keep going.
Me too. Me too. Me too. For the rest of
Take
you
care,
who
Will.
like and subscribe, I'm glad that you're liking and subscribing, and you should do it more. But we're having a great time here.
Yeah, that's right.
So thank you, Lale.
Thank you very much, and over to you.
Oh, thank you both so much, Dr. Zaheer. Excellent points and excellent comments by you, Rabbi Wiseman, and an amazing follow-up from the excellent teaching from Rabbi Wiseman last week as well. So thank you both so much. I'm a student of both of you, and I think you're both amazing. So God bless you both. And Alhamdulillah, all praise, glory, and thanks be to God. I'm very grateful that we've had this opportunity and we could create this space for this Abrahamic dialogue, and I really hope it inspires people. And I'm sure it does. It really inspires me. So thank you so much. Sorry, that's my dog. Someone at the door. Um, I can't really add anything. I think you've covered everything. I think God bless you both. I would just like to also just end up again on that point that I made last week as well, is that um I think the role of religious teachers should be to try to show students how to be a good student by embodying a student themselves. So that involves sometimes maybe answering questions by asking questions, encouraging students to ask questions, like you said, Dr. Zaheer, and perhaps encouraging them to seek the answers as well, because I believe that all the answers are inside of us. We just forget, and the role of teachers are to help us remind ourselves. And I think the best teachers are those who can, always can remind themselves and others that they're students also. And our best teacher is obviously the Almighty. He's our teacher, and everybody has access to him, direct access to him. But I think sometimes people lose their faith in their ability to access God, and that's why they seek help from teachers. And actually, God has allowed this to happen as a way of teaching us through teachers. But really, we want, everybody is a student, and there's so much we can learn from every interaction. And I believe everything is a teacher, so a flower can be a teacher, and when you walk outside and you look at the sky can teach us things. All we have to do is just ask the questions and seek the wisdom, seek the knowledge, seek the understanding. So I guess that humility, and may God help us and always guide us to be good role models and examples, and keep our hearts humble, and help us to learn from each other. Students and teachers are actually like one. They're just like mirrors, I think, of the other, and maybe be able to see the teacher and student in every single one of us. And I think you mentioned something last week, Rabbi Wiseman, about what makes a good student. So
Yes.
perhaps that can be also one of our topics, is to
Yeah.
discuss the
I think it's a
qualities
great
of
topic. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's
qualities
right.
of a student. Because without the student, the student enables the teacher to be able to teach, and the teacher
Yeah,
enables the student
right.
to learn.
That's an important point. Yeah.
So it's important to look at both the student and the teacher. So God bless you both. Thank you
Thank
I
you.
have to say
so
one thing. I have to say one thing very briefly towards the end. I'm saying it because the next time I'll forget. So I want to just, what
Please
they
do,
say,
please do.
I just want to register. You know, Rabbi Wiseman, I mean, we are talking to each other. We represent two different religious traditions, but there is a third important tradition. And I just want to say this, that, you know, in this city, small city of 12, I am an administrator and teacher in an Islamic school. And goodness me, I'm so impressed that last year and this year, 3 or 4 different groups of students were brought by Christian school teachers to our masjid for me to tell them what Islam is. I mean, honestly, it's so brilliant. I'm so impressed. Uh, you need to have a heart. You need to have, you need to have openness to be able to do it. So I just wanted to share it with you that, there are really good people uh, in all traditions. And well, in this case, the Christians have done remarkably well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's certainly I've had groups come to the synagogue also and talk to them, and it's been very nice. Always been very nice.
That's true.
May God bless you both for
Thank you.
all your efforts to teach and share your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding with others. And yeah, God bless you. So
Thank you.
peace and blessings, everybody. Thank you for watching, and see you next week. Oh, next week. Oh, okay. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Bye.
Alaikum assalam.